It says masked, plainclothes officers of the state cruising America's second largest city in unmarked vans, snatching individuals off the street without warrants and whisking them away to locations unknown or detention centers where members of Congress have been barred unlawfully from entering. Sure sounds like a constitutional America, doesn't it? Congressional members have the legal right to spontaneously go through these detention centers. Look it up. And they're just refusing that. The point is, they're refusing to allow them in, which is a crime, and people don't want to acknowledge that. But the overarching point for me is just how lawless this all is. No, these people are literally screaming about the Constitution, America first, and then ignoring the fact these people are the current embodiment of an unlawful, unconstitutional force in this country. No, faceless, nameless, no warrant, no charges provided. Many cases just being locked away until they figure it out. Now, Aaron Melnick says specifically $800 million for retention and signing bonuses and $8 billion for hiring 10,000 new ICE officers over the next 4 years. So one of the immediate repercussions is rationalizing more police force, more enforcement, more surveillance over your life, because clearly we need to look at what's happening. That's the point. Trump, White House this morning, big, beautiful bill will give ICE agents raises and bonuses and more. They're with the plan that at least is stated, and we'll see if the bill passes, is to turn ICE into the largest agency more than anybody. More funding, more people, over everything, over the FBI, over everything. This is the new Gestapo, guys. I mean, how do you not see how this is being built?
Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Barca, with co-host, teacher and socialist Andy Lipson, and socialist and community college math professor Michael Hoffman. We're online at whatsleftpodcast.com. Again, that is whatsleftpodcast.com. You can find that link to our site in the episode notes. You can also find my personal social media handle as at Don Eduardo Barca. Please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications, and share your favorite episode wherever you found this episode. We have merch as well. If you fancy a shirt, contact us to our site at whatsleftpodcast.com. All right, so let's get into it. We have a lot to cover. Something happened over this past week, and I think we'll cover it. Andy, why don't you give us? I think we'll cover it. We will cover it. Andy, give us. Andy, why don't you kick us off and tell us where you're at?
Well, first off, you can see I'm in a different location with the background and stuff. It's Redmond, Oregon. Yeah. Me and Brandy and Kismo are on our 2-week post school vacation, driving kind of around the Northwest, which will culminate in the Grand Tetons. Is that right? Yeah. And Brandy's right over there. Let's take a look. You see Brandy over there, right? She says hi. And Kismo's down there. Do you see?
We're very personal podcast.
He's sleeping. He's wiped out from the walk we took. Where were we walking?
Smith Rock State Park in Oregon.
Smith Rock
really
State Park.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, so we're going back again tomorrow. Anyway, enough about that. Last week, Eduardo, you had mentioned the demonstrations, protests, what are called riots, been called an uprising. The response to ICE raids that have stepped off in LA. And this is the one that's got everyone's attention. And I'll just say what I know about as what I think are some of the facts of it. First off, there's a backdrop to this that I know of is around the country. There have been moments where we've seen either in local news or just on videos, people confronting ICE agents as they go into communities and grab people, or try to grab people. So this is not just something that just was a one-off in LA. This has been building up. And I think what seems to be the detonator for this moment has been the increasing ICE aggressiveness, and the fear that ICE has brought to people and immigrants. And now, like, apparently the ICE came in like almost special forces garb, into a Home Depot. I don't know, can't remember what the community was, but it's in LA. And there was pushback. And I don't know all the circumstances around even that event. I saw some video that showed them trying to grab somebody and people all being around the person they tried to grab. But that seems to have been the spark for a broader kind of anger that has led to street protests, bridge occupations. Um, People have seen signs of police cars on fire, and there have been buildings or windows broken. This is the rioting part. Um, and then of course there have been demonstrations in front of. There was a demonstration in San Francisco like last week in front of the ICE office. So it's kind of started a series of demonstrations as well. And of course, Gavin, I don't know what the initial Gavin Newsom response was, but Trump can't come in and basically said, "I'm going to bring the National Guard in to get order." And then if not the National Guard, I'm going to call in the Marines. People are talking about how that's unconstitutional and how it seems like there's trying to be government overreach and things like that. And of course, he's saying Gavin Newsom's not doing anything. Gavin Newsom's kind of saying, "I'm going to oppose Trump," and there's that positioning. You can. I also have more to say about that, and say that I'll be the person who's in charge of dealing with this. And anything else I'll say in terms of just some of the facts that I know. And then I'll just say the response that I've seen, particularly in the freedom movement, has been like, "Oh my God, look what these people are doing to the police. Look how you know, these people are breaking the law." Um,
Oh,
yeah, like, and like these people are here illegally,
Go
and
back to where you came from.
yeah, even go back to there've been like go back to where these people should go back from where they came from. Um, so the freedom movement has had a very disappointing response to this, and I can cite just even the kind of more luminaries in the right wing freedom movement, which I feel like been exposed as frauds as they cheer on the implementation, not just the attack on immigrants, but the implementation of things like Palantir to go after them. So I think that starts to get into some of the other things. I'll just say that those are some of the I'll call facts that I know, or at least as I understand them, and maybe other people could bring in ones that they know that I don't. So I'll start there.
well, I mean, I think you've covered pretty much the headlines of what's been going on. And yes, I've tried to touch liberal bases and touch the base of Bantercast Live, what they're listening to, what they're saying, the response to, which is mostly the reactionary Republican right, as they like to be associated with. And I think the socialists that I'll just say the socialists you and I know, Andy, folks from PSL are sort of teaming up with the liberal left. I just I'm listening. I'm receiving different ways of understanding this, so that I can try to come up with what I think about this. And yeah, it's mostly at this time. It's this. There's been a lot of lots of praise for the strong opposition from California Governor Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass, and
The opposition to Trump.
the opposition to Trump. Yes, thank you for clarifying. And there are these demonstrations that are being now supported across the country in other major U.S. cities like New York, Chicago, and Dallas.
The No Kings demonstration,
Right.
which I want to talk a lot about.
Yes. So I think that we've covered it. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Michael. I don't. I think we should get right into it.
The things that I watched were I watched the press release where Gavin Newsom was responding to Trump calling in the national. Oh no, he was responding to the court order that said the National Guard had to go back under his command, under the governor's command. And one of the things that is very clear when you listen to the Democrats talking is that they really just don't like how Trump is going about it. And they fundamentally agree and even say that they agree with, yeah, we need to deport bad guys, but not like this, not in broad daylight with people wearing masks. And I realized that it made me wonder, like, how were they doing it before? Um, did they have some completely different method of deporting people that was less visible? It seems like they did. And a couple of sources now tell me that the actual deportations have not risen. In fact, actual removals, and I'd be happy to share, share the screen and show folks the particular websites that you can look at and read. But the immigration statistics are not reported by the government. So there are organizations that essentially track it through the news and through following the court transcripts. And they basically are like, well, arrests are up 2% under Trump, but actual removals are down 1%. Right. So what it looks like to me is that Trump I think they're trying to test the more direct authority from the federal government being used to carry out what really is, though, the same in substance, the same authoritarian machinery that they always have. So this really is, to me, like an escalation, not in substance, but in it's a political escalation in the sense that these are more highly politicized deportations, and basically they had, in the middle of the day, big raids. They like on June 6th they got like 44 people. They just showed up at like a Home Depot and started and several other places around LA. And the thing that's heartening about it is people started fighting back. I do think there was an expectation that there would be a backlash. It's hard for me to tell like how much this is like a provocation where they expected people to fight back. But people really did fight back, like really try and stop the ICE agents from taking people, as they should. And I support that. I mean, if some government thug came and took away the person who's who's worked in the same restaurant as you for from months to years, I would say no, that person is that's my coworker. That's somebody who has the same interests as me. Right. And so there is sort of I feel like there's a very much like a class war nature to the attack on immigrants and the response, and the attack has seemed to really unite and activate a large layer of working class people. Like, this is not like a specific lefty thing. This is very broad layers of working class people just saying like, don't come and kidnap us. But I do, but I wonder about how much the political theater of the Newsom pretending to oppose things is gonna work to continue to capture the movement at its base. But I do think people are out in the streets learning some hard lessons actually about state repression. It remains to be seen if it maintains legs and can survive through this crisis, to have legs and a sense of its own history, because people are really fighting back now.
Yeah, and that's the part I want to talk about. I mean, first off, I think it's already a wrap. I think the No Kings demonstration are going to do essentially completely capture politically the actual independent sentiment that is underneath the people who were fighting against the armed forces of the state coming and taking their coworkers or their sons and daughters or their cousins or their neighbors. I think I first want to say, like you, Michael, I wholly support the initiative of working people to defend themselves from the armed forces of the state kidnapping them or taking them for any reason. And like and in the same way that we are for open borders because we are opposed to the state being empowered to restrict where working people can go, um, I am for this resistance because I am for working people determining their own fates. And that is the state that has empowered these agents to do that are not are not just people who are. It's not just a state that's against them. That's a state against me. It's the same state that went against the Canadian truckers. It's the same state that Newsom rolled out to put the lockdowns on us and to say stay-at-home orders. Um, this is not a different state acting. It has a different elements of it, different people who do different stuff, but it's the instinct of these special forces being brought into Home Depot are the same ones that were attacking the Canadian truckers, the same ones doing stay-at-home orders and telling us we had to stay out of our you couldn't go back to school, and that if you were out in the park, we could pick you up and arrest you. By the way, I'll just say parenthetically, yes, it was done back in the day, but it was tended to be a little quieter in terms of let's go through the social security numbers of this employer. Oh, this employer doesn't have a social security number. Let's send an agent there to go pick that person up, put them in jail, and then if they don't make a deal, they're going to deport them. And Eduardo, we both know someone who kind of went that way in terms of their dad basically deported that way. I mean, and that happened to. That's why Obama was the deporter in chief, because he was using it a quieter way, but still there was somebody showing up at your door or
That's
somebody.
the proper way to do it.
Right.
That's how according to Newsom and Karen Bass, that's how it should be done.
That's the liberal way. That's the liberal way to do it. Go find get a bureaucrat to look for a social security number. If you don't have it, then they'll send an agent to your boss or to your door, and then they'll come and grab you. Okay. So that's kids in cages didn't start with Trump. All right. But so I just think like the first real thing to say, because people in the movement are talking about this thing as an op in and of itself, like that it was all engineered from above, that they're just putting these people in places like chess pieces. I do believe that the ICE attack on the working class is an op. Like there is a reason for it, but it's wholly like who wouldn't support the people defending themselves from that? Like anybody who talks about freedom, anybody who talks about this, the Second Amendment, the whole basis for the Second Amendment for many people is defending yourself from the state. So that's what these people are doing, and they're not generally doing it in an armed way, although they will need to if they really wanted to do it successfully and be even more effective. But that the level of organization isn't there yet. So full stop. Any freedom movement worth its salt would wholly defend and support the acts of families and neighbors and workers trying to defend themselves from the armed forces of the state coming into your workplace, your neighborhood, and kidnapping you. That's not where the things are at, but that's where it should be. Now, once it gets into things like the what are called the riots, it becomes there's a different operation going on. I've seen pictures of like there's that really famous picture, I'll show it, of the guy who's got his Mexican flag and he's standing on top of a police car, but he's also surrounded by a group of camera people. You know, it's like it's literally a press conference being held by the movement. And that is an attempt to polarize at one level. And I don't really know what to make of that. And that stuff's going to happen. Like, if there's a movement of resistance, that stuff is going to be a feature of it because the state isn't an idiot and the state's going to take advantage. And secondly, in response to that, now you have the adults of the movement coming forward and saying, we're going to do the No Kings demonstration. And no kings, what do they mean? Oh, they mean no Trump. This is the Democratic Party rolling out its machine to basically say, we want to take all the sentiment around that's angry about Trump, that's angry about what's happening to people in their community, and we're going to try to draw that back in the Democratic Party. And it's not in opposition to Trump. It's like the two wings of the same bird. to the extent that it gets drawn in, it is literally going to be drawn in to manifest itself as part of the capitalist class that will come back and attack those same set of workers later on in the same way or a different way. So the No Kings demonstration is a complete fraud, but it's going to be a very effective one. And I want to just show you one thing about it that I thought was very interesting. Here are the partners for the No Kings demonstration, right? AFT, Educational Healthcare Public Services, ACLU, American Humanist Association, Bernie Sanders and his group, Blue Wave America, Chicago Women Take Action, Climate Psychology Alliance, College Democrats of America, Communication Workers Association. I mean, look, this thing goes on forever and ever and ever. What it is basically the apparatus of the Democratic Party that has deep links into the communities using these combinations of unions, NGOs, and everything like that to pretty much control the message of this movement, to basically say that this movement, which is regular working people fighting the state, is not about that. It's about opposing Donald Trump. It's about stopping autocracy. And they seem to forget that only, 3-4 years ago, Governor Newsom was issuing an executive state order. What was the date on this? March 4th, 2020, basically saying that you can't leave your home or the state's going to come and get you. It said certain people can leave their homes, but here it was. So these are the people who are telling us there's going to be no kings. The people who appointed Governor Newsom as a king 3 or 4 years ago. And so the No Kings slogan is literally an attempt to politically capture that. And that, to the extent that this thing is an op, that's the op, or at least that's the op on the liberal side, because it's also going to galvanize people on the right wing side underneath Trump to basically be excited that he's doing something about immigration. And those are the same people who are actually coming in and saying, I want Palantir to come in and use its infrastructure and its AI to find these people and get them out of here. And it's what's happening is, again, just like elections, we're seeing two sections of the working class, one drawn into the Democratic Party, one drawn into the Republican Party. Both of those places, they all go to the same ocean of let the state determine what happens, and don't trust working people, and in fact oppose working people when they act freely, because that's what the Democrats did under lockdown, and that's what Republicans are doing now when immigrants are fighting for independence. And not just immigrants, just working people in this country who support them as well. So that's what I see going on here. But I still am very heartened by the resistance, even if I know that it's going to be used against us, because resistance is better than no resistance. And that's like, what are you supposed to do? Just sit here and take it? That would be worse. And so, yes, there's hard lessons going to be learned. Unfortunately, I probably think that this is going to be less about lessons being learned, but it's going to be another spin of the hamster wheel, reforming both the forces behind the Republican Party and behind the Democratic Party and for the elections. And it's not going to have the element of making people realize that they can't trust any of this. But that's the message I'm going to deliver, which is No Kings offers no hope. It's just, and is actually as deep an attack on the movement as the National Guard being brought in.
I'm in a Telegram chat with a few other folks that I know personally, that Jake created, and they're mostly Jacob Schmidt, who is on Bantercast Live, the other podcast that I'm on, and they're mostly leaning towards the politics of MAGA, and they truly, if they listen to anything I say, and I tried on this last Tuesday that I was recording with them, they would not believe that this is that this conversation, we're having this discussion, because they think that the Democrats are or the libs, as they say, are actually for open borders, and they just share images after images of the Democrats lightning, or what do you call it? Yeah, the situation of what is being portrayed in the media. And so they will say things that are, they are colluding with those rioters, the insurrectionists, and it's opposite of what is actually happening. And I'm glad Michael shared that link with us in the group chat that we have about the rates of deportees during Biden and compared to the first 100 days of Trump. And I was also looking at it myself here on a separate source, so I could try to figure out if that was verified. And yes, slightly higher Biden's percentages and the rate, excuse me, of deportees were higher, and it's just out in the open, as Michael was saying. The unfortunate part is when I was on the podcast last Tuesday and tried to show images of the 6th of January as in comparison, because it's not like I want to play tick for tack. Because Jacob kept showing image after image of like cars being, which by the way I don't really care if these Waymo and AI cars being burned. You know, I don't know what he wanted to get a rouse out of me. And he said, "What do you think of this? Do you condemn it? Do you condemn it?" And I said, as long as they're AI cars and no one was inside, then why would I condemn that? So I showed the 6th of January and I said, look, here's another uprising, that insurrectionist. And what I want to show by these is just how the Democrats went against this uprising and the Republicans are going against this uprising. And that's all I wanted to show. Now, we may have different goals, I said, about, stop the steal, the MAGA support, saving one man's vote, or, the election, upturning the election. But the energy and the frustration, I think, is similar. And that there is actually a movement that could be built there if we only tied together, if we only build and we would bridge together. But unfortunately, you want me to condemn the LA protests, and I'm not going to condemn the LA protest, as well as I'm not going to ask you to condemn the 6th of January. I think the 6th of January was a history lesson for us all to see what happens when you actually go up against the elite class, and you see what they will do to what do you call it, to go militarize afterwards and arrest everyone when you have an uprising like that. Well, on just the different goals here. And I think that we should have a revolution. I'm not going to have any. I'm not going to share to you what I think that would look like, because I think it really is the response, it's the reaction, what we will have to decide together collectively. So if that means that this is the appropriate response, then I'll support it. I can't tell you that I'll condemn it. And so I don't think that sit well with Jake, and I don't think that even the people that are in this Telegram chat, they were confused by it. It's like, you don't condemn either violence, you're not going to. No, I'm not going to, because I see frustration and I see, unfortunately, missed opportunities from this group of people and that group of people to actually see what's really going on here. And these people are not actually undocumented, I said, because if they were undocumented, they wouldn't be tracked digitally. There would be no data mining happening. Institutional records wouldn't be actually in those documented folk, whether it be through immigration applications, arrest records, school enrollments, hospital visits, or tax filings. There's just so much that's happening that the only thing that I think that Doge is really about, and I said that, is that there's actually a partnership happening between all of these platforms. DHS, the FBI, and IRS now are going to be interconnected, and that's what immigration is really about. It's to be able to link them up in a very strategic way so that you could have all these databases. And I'm also beginning to question, I didn't say this on this podcast, but these cities aren't actually sanctuary cities as they like to promote themselves. Because if that was it, then why did the mayor, Karen Bass, was talking about, oh my goodness, it's happening. They're militarizing our streets. But the LAPD has already been militarizing the streets. They're actually more equipped, I would say, than the National Guard. Because the National Guard, as I was listening to in the news, they have to get training about how to deal with mobs and how to deal with the masses. And LAPD is quite trained in all of this. So I think that talk is cheap. These Democrat mayors are saying one thing in the news, but then acting differently on the ground. And for all the I hate dividing us like this, but I'll say the reactionary Republicans saying that the Dems are open borders. I showed a video on that podcast as well where I uh, I had the video of Kamala Harris saying, "Don't come, stay away," and telling immigrants they shouldn't move or go and cross borders. I mean, that's not open borders. So they've got their definitions all kind of they've got it all screwed up. They don't really have it together. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I appreciate the stats that you shared with us, Michael. I'm also energized by what happened to LA, but I'm also disappointed that this reaction was not the same reaction we had in the first 100 days or the first year of the administration of Biden. And if only we don't lose focus. That's the only thing every time I see something like this. It's the energy that I see that could lead to a larger wave that could actually propel something greater. That would be the hope. And so let's not lose sight. But I don't know if the working class is there yet. And so these are my thoughts that have been running through my mind this week. And of course, I'm upset by the people that are being arrested. Of course, I'm upset by the people that are being demonized. And of course, I'm upset that, you know, families are being ripped apart. But I'm also upset that we're not really paying attention. We're not paying attention of Clearview AI, Palantir, and all the systems that centers of AI on the border are actually trying to do to track all of us and surveil us. And I appreciate Brandy, who is like the fourth co-host here in the background, having shared so many sources with us on what's actually happening with biometrics update. And that's what I'm really fearing. And this whole thing about immigration reforms, I ask my community not to appeal for those and not to look for pathways to citizenship. Because if we do that, then we're just going to get a stronger network of AI systems that are going to be able to keep us all tracked. I mean, I think we're tracked already here. But if you're going to be tracked, at least use your voice to be able to say something about it. And then once I start seeing a movement happening, I'm shutting down everything, you know, and losing myself out without updating any license, without updating anything that is expired. But I don't see that yet. And so I hope that one day we'll get there and truly be undocumented or off grid, as I have said previously. So, I mean, any person undocumented isn't actually undocumented.
Right. They're not a person because the state tells them they're a person.
Right. So
Go ahead, Mike.
there are so many ways that we're just being tracked.
Yeah, I love that point because it puts an emphasis on what does it mean when we're talking about undocumented versus documented. It basically is like, does the state give you full rights or not? Like it literally is, are you a good kind of citizen or a bad kind of, and that's even, you know, it's basically like, can we just, you know, lock you up without any, you know, without any due process or not? Do you have some semblance of rights or not? And we're actually all being tracked in all kinds of different ways. On the question of people buying into the Trump narrative, it's not my world, right? So it always surprises me when I hear you guys talking about what. Although I understand it. I understand it, but I want to share actually the press release and then the response from this immigration group. So Trump sent out this press release April 28th, the Trump White House. A remarkable, historic turnaround. The Biden administration refused to enforce our nation's laws when it came to border security. This allowed millions of illegal aliens, including criminals, gang members, and terrorists, into our country. But in just 100 days, President Trump and Secretary Noem have not only closed our border, but have delivered the most secure border in American history. And I came to this via just a nerdy kind of immigration tracking group, Track Immigration. And just so you understand what they do, they basically, here's a list of all the different immigration courts in the country, and you can go through all of them. Here's all the different judges that have ruled on immigration cases. This is focused on asylum cases, people applying for asylum, which many undocumented folks end up applying for asylum. But they just basically go through and, they look, what's happening in these court records. And so they wrote this article here about Trump claims on immigration enforcement, rhetoric versus reality. And they say in response to that that press release where they said just 100 days we're surpassing Biden. They go through and I will, instead of reading through in detail, I'll go right to the summary table. Okay, where here's Biden to date, fiscal year 2024, and actual Trump numbers. And basically, Trump is 1% behind. And the daily average arrests, though, is up, which to me is consistent with Trump has basically gotten more people to go around trying to arrest people because that was a campaign promise. And unlike any of those Democrats, Trump at least tries to make it look like he's delivering on some of the campaign promises.
But just for people who can't see, the degree to which it's up is a 2% increase.
Right. Right. So the daily average arrests, which is different than removals, is a little higher. But I want to say, like, statistically, when you're talking about, something as large and complex as this, what I see, how I read these is that they're not different. There really is not. This is not necessarily a significant difference at all. That the machinery, that the actual bureaucracy of deportation that exists for all the reasons why, we've discussed before. I mean, it's related to controlling labor. There's political reasons. That machinery is essentially still in its full effect. And essentially, it's been skewed a little bit more. I would say it's been skewed a little bit more for the political purposes of Trump himself. So, people who think Trump is somehow some large departure, I don't understand how you can be so gullible. And especially for those who feel like, what does liberty mean? I mean, how could you side? Like, why would you side with, just random people who are workers being removed? How is that liberty? How is that freedom? So like this sort of bootlicker libertarianism is just so disgusting to me because it means that they really only care about liberty for the capitalist class. And I wanted to show one other thing, which is on that note about liberty, someone shared with me a very interesting letter that was sent to one of the main organizations, which will lead to some of the on-the-ground stuff here. So one of the big organizations organizing the response in Los Angeles is the Union del Barrio, and they are apparently an independent political organization, which, and I haven't looked into it very much, but, essentially they are being now sent letters from the U.S. Senate Right. So this is a letter from Josh Hawley to uh, one of the heads of the Union del Barrio, and he says, "In my capacity as chair of the Senate Subcommittee on Crime and Counterterrorism, regarding your organization's alleged role in financing and materially supporting the coordinated protests and riots that have engulfed Los Angeles in recent weeks. While peaceful protest is a cornerstone of American democracy, these demonstrations have escalated into lawless mob actions. They have obstructed federal law enforcement, endangered public safety, and disrupted the rule of law. This lawlessness is unacceptable. It must end." So it basically calls them to give over all their internal communications. It's basically telling them to comply with this data request and with their investigations, right? So this is to like a like a community organization that happen to be involved in organizing people to oppose people being snatched by federal agents. And there's a lot of questions about the nature of the resistance and how it's organized around folks like Union del Barrio. But on the face of it here, it seems like they really are trying specifically, and it's really politically specifically about the rights of federal law enforcement versus any other authority, right? So essentially, this confrontation has been federal authority versus any other state or local authority, and they're using that as a pretext to demonize any of the response on the ground. But I do think that it's kind of like that the test case really is how far can they go with direct federal power versus local and state power. But it's a kind of, I don't know, it's a little crazy.
Yeah, honestly, I would be a little. I'm going to be. I'll in terms of independent. I'll believe it when I see it.
Sure.
Like I don't think that. First of all, I don't think of what took place as an uprising, largely
Right.
because the level of organization that exists within the working class is not enough. For the same reason, January 6th was not an insurrection. Although I do believe January 6th, while it tapped into a working class anger about people being lied to in regard to their illusions that they live in a democracy, so that they were lied to about a lie that they've already believed. But I believe there was legitimate anger in the January 6th sentiment that became that whatever that government operation was. I think there's more I would say that people opposing ICE agents in their community and trying to like throwing rocks at their cars, which I saw them doing, not like in LA, just in LA, but things that were happening like in Michigan or other places. I'd seen people like saying, "Give me something I can throw at these people so I can try to like do something," so people were clearly pissed, and that I know is legit and is righteous and should be supported by any person who believes in freedom. And of course, for a Marxist, if you believe in revolution, you definitely support that because it's that instinct of fighting your government and fighting the state and fighting ultimately the capitalist class that is going to have to be tapped into. But let's be clear, it's at a very disorganized, non-incoherent place. It was at January 6th, and they got played, and the federal government used it to give itself more power and to more power to the Department of Homeland Security and more power around their electoral system, and more power to censor and things like that. And so I think that the for me, it's going to be those forces that come out and oppose not just Donald Trump, but oppose the No Kings demonstration are going to get my attention. Like if you're opposed to Donald Trump and the National Guard and the Marines and ICE agents, and you are also saying, don't lift a single finger to build that No Kings demonstration and actually come out and let's do something else. Like, because that is their attempt to draw us into the same wing that deposits us into the place that Donald Trump is at. That is where I believe that there's something independent. So, like, that's what I'd be looking for, and I don't think there's going to be much there that's going to be that way. Like, I'm part of a rapid response network here that there's no part of the organization that I see on the list, and the people who are doing this rapid response network, which basically is just if people see ICE agents, we all get calls that said, "Hey, can you go to that place to see if somebody's being harassed by an ICE agent?" Those people are supporting the protests and things like that, but are also supporting the No Kings. And I'm like, well, then you don't get it. You don't get what's taking place. Then you're just another sucker, in my opinion. And so I'm going to be I'm very suspicious of, not suspicious, but I just don't. I think the working class movement. I don't call this an uprising because I believe the working class movement is very disorganized. And in order to do an uprising, you need to be better organized. You need to know when you're bringing weapons, why you're bringing weapons, what you're doing that for, and where you're marshaling your forces and why you're doing that. And that's not the situation that I really believe is happening here. I do want to say something about the Waymo cars because I'm on the Stop AI group chat, and some of the people were like thinking like that it was not good that people were destroying the Waymo cars, even though they support the demonstrations in the Stop AI, and they were like, what does Waymo have to do with the attack with ICE? And it's like, dude, there's a direct connection. ICE,
very much so.
yeah, the scapegoating of immigrants. That is, and that ICE represents that scapegoating, the sharp end of the spear of the state and scapegoating immigrants is completely connected to deflecting about the real attack on the working class and on the future of labor and the future of their jobs. They're basically saying these immigrants are taking your jobs when your jobs are literally being snatched under you by things like AI and Waymo and Palantir and data collection and all that kind of stuff. So there's a direct connection between people who would be opposing ICE agents and who would be saying we want to tear down this AI infrastructure. That will also need to be a feature of a revolutionary movement if we get there. But I just want to say that those things are directly connected. And I wanted to speak to that.
I mean, I don't. Besides that, yes, there's the labor force market, which also have been now slowly AI is creeping into fields that used to be occupied by people and being replaced. Labor is being replaced by AI. These autonomous vehicles, they collect and store large amounts of visual and sensor data to operate safely. I'm just reading here. But this is not just for safety. This is also in cahoots with the government in order to track and to keep that data for external from the external internal cameras that provide so much information to the government. So it's not just about safety and navigation. It's a way to also, if police wanted to, or just the government wanted to, they can make requests to disclose information that supposedly should be otherwise confidential. So anyhow, I just think it's deeply connected. I'm not in with that group that you. I would like to get in that group to see what they say about that. But there's the groups that I mentioned, and the people that are voted for Trump or support Trump are having some reflections because they're Latinos. I'd like to speak to that for a bit because on Bantercast Live, as Andy knows, it's a back and forth debate. I can hardly get anything in. So if I could just say it here,
Say all you need to say right now.
I don't get a chance to say much there. Andy knows. It's really fast. They at this point, regrets don't matter. I know someone specifically was sharing with me that they just are not on board with the trans movement. We've had discussions here on WhatsApp. We had a former co-host who was very anti the trans movement. The point is, I stand clear with what Andy and I have discussed. They're commoners, just like us, and I'm not going to disown or disassociate myself from some other commoner that is also aligned with the same, that also being repressed by the same government and the state. And I know people who want to do something about LGBT issues, but that's what Trump did in order to hook folks to vote for him and to actually be on his side. And I'm not asking that person or whoever voted for Trump to go and vote for Democrats either. I'm simply saying that they were hooked, they were hypnotized, and they went and supported Trump. And there's no need for regrets now. There's need for a clear reflection that this is actually what they were meant to do. It's to get you for a larger agenda. So I don't know. I can't thinking of this person in my head. I don't want to say their name out loud, but I think that this is an opportunity for us to actually be more conscientious and to step away from those electoral politics and to think of the larger picture. So that's my message to that person. And for other folks that think that this is all the violence, I once had a conversation with Andy a long time ago, and I said, will revolution be violent? And you said, if it calls for violence, maybe it might. That might be the response from the labor class. I don't know. I can't say, because it's not my revolution. It's the revolution that will have to happen by people. And reformists want you to stick to your lane and to do it the peaceful way. But how has that worked over time? And so the response by the people, if this is the response, and I think that that's what it will look like. So I don't want to come out here and say I condemn it. I want to make sure that what we do is actually a way to save us and to take care of us, to really fight for us. Might look in different ways. So that's the other thing too that I think that I was being pushed on is well, I condemn this violence. I don't know. It's not my call to say, but I also know there are a lot of provocateurs. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
When people who go out, I was seeing some video of the press asking some people, I don't know, some cameraman to stand up on a car and then take a picture and then high five him afterwards. That doesn't seem very genuine to me. So, I also am kind of like, is this really happening, or is this? And as you were saying with that picture with the guy, it was all sort of looks like was somewhat staged there, So I don't know if those are the real heroes that are showing up in front of the camera.
I want to say something about one. People have to know that cops intentionally go into the protests and provoke stuff so that they can crack down on the protests. Like, this is not new. Like, this is like, that's really old, So the other thing is like the Waymo cars. Here, I was driving in San Francisco the other day, and I want to show you a billboard I saw. And it made me think, and you just made me think about how much it's connected to this ICE crackdown. And I'll show it to you. It literally says just stop hiring humans. Stop hiring humans. And my immediate response was like, what are people supposed to do?
Can you share that with me, Michael?
This is the company that did it. This is a picture of their billboard on there. And, what do we have to do to get to a world where there's so many people who need jobs and so few people who can actually give jobs, and what they want to do is hire a goddamn computer? Please excuse my foul language. But
not only is it Waymo,
that's how I feel.
It's also Tesla.
I really hope, and I didn't mean to single out Union del Barrio, because I don't really know anything about him politically, but I know that where we're at now in the left, you're right. there's no coherence. There's no like coherent strategy. I work with people who are involved in a group called 50-51, which is like a very broad, I do think that the Democratic Party is like involved in it, but it also is where a lot of people will go. Like we're going through a process of radicalization where things like those broad usurpation protests, which by the way, Gavin Newsom was like, everybody's going to come and express their, basically Gavin Newsom was talking about the protest on Saturday, saying like, he basically was publicizing the No Kings protest, right? So clearly that was like, okay, right. The Democratic Party sees that as, yes, please go there. Let's make this about Trump and let's make this about federal overreach. And let's not make it about the basic needs of working class people for jobs and safety, right? The basic needs of people to have a secure life. So those things, though, will have to develop, and then there will have to be splits within them, right? So I'm not like, yes, I also am more hopeful from the people who are like, I oppose the No Kings protests, right? But from the level of organization we're at, I think a lot of the people who are in those No Kings protests are going to have to learn a hard lesson as things develop, and there will be people who break from it because we're at such an elementary process that even the more radical wing, even that narrative that allows people to see that this is co-optation, right? It doesn't have a big audience. We have to build the audience for the people who understand that co-optation. But I do think that audience is growing, especially through the, especially because of the crisis caused by Palestine. That, Governor Newsom, right, somehow cares. Governor Newsom is concerned about ICE snatching away parents from children. Right? But what did he do about the thousands of children being murdered in Gaza? What did he do? He helped to basically impose this idea of this draconian idea that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. I mean, he's completely on board with cracking down on the anti-Palestine protests, right? So you will have there will be layers, right, of people with different levels of consciousness. But I think the left is going to have much more strength and visibility to peel people away. And I'm not sure how much they'll be able to peel people away from stuff like the No Kings protests. Because I know some radicalizing people, that's going to be the only thing they ever knew about, the only thing they ever heard about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure. And it's not. There's nothing. And I think that all the bitterness that you express about those libertarians, I do feel, because I think those people did at one point oppose another set of kings, the kings of Biden, the kings of Newsom, the kings of Trudeau. And what I find, the reason I want to spit when I think about 50-51 or any of these people adhering to this No Kings and thinking that another set of kings who just only 3 or 4 years ago were pushing their own set of autocracy and have been and did so under Biden. Now they're going to tell me that these are people who are no kings. I'm like, I'm sorry, that's too much contradiction for me to believe that you haven't already been played. And no, Michael, I don't believe there's first of all, there's no left to bring any coherence. The left is going to say, we go to the demonstration, we're going to try to radicalize people within it. No, you've got to oppose those demonstrations. You've got to try to you have to build something independent, because what's being built there is literally a trap of the order that those libertarians that you're so mad about are already caught in. And it's the same trap. So it's like, I feel bitterness on to both audiences of workers who are for No Kings and workers who are for Palantir, if you will, workers who are for border enforcement. I think I think a left would have made a distinction. Well, they're less racist or more racist. I don't. I think both of those sets are equally being played, could play an equal role in actually building a real independent working class movement, but we're fucked. And there's I see absolutely no hope for this to turn into anything other than one more spin of the Wheel of Fortune again. Like, it looks to me like we're going to play exactly the same game that I just saw, that we saw got played with Obama, that I just saw played with Trump, and now here it comes again for the 2028 midterm elections. That's all this is going to be. And so I would be foolish for me to have any hope in this, particularly when I know the left, or no, the forces of revolution are shattered, isolated, and lost. I didn't get a chance to listen to that podcast. I was a little skeptical based on the title, what it said, Uprising or whatever. And you had to sign in to go see that podcast. But if in that podcast those people were trying to tell me that there's some hope here, then I think those people are fools. And I would like them to tell me why. What are they going to bring that's going to peel off a layer and bring people into something real? Because I don't think they're doing that. I think they're just doing that same thing we did in the ISO, which was look from the outside inside and cheerlead and give ourselves some positive things to believe in, like in the same way that Catholics hold on to their rosary in order to have hope, in order to hold on to some kind of faith that something's coming around the bend. But faith will not organize us. Like, it's a material will. So
No, I don't actually disagree. And in fact, the only reason why I was venting on libertarians is because liberals were not the main topic of the conversation. Don't get me started on liberals. But the thing about the protests that I was saying was not that this is some hopeful thing, because I agree with you. It's completely co-optative. What I was describing was what I see as part of a process that would have to occur, which is that there will be a growth of these things and there will have to be splits from them if there's ever going to be the development of something independent, right? Because there's nothing, because right now there's no center of gravity, right? And I agree with you. We have to try and be that independent center of gravity, right? But right now, I got maybe 10, 20 folks who listen to me, on this podcast, right? So it was merely like thinking about the process that will occur, and maybe it's wrong, and maybe you're right. Like, it won't look like that at all. But I do see that it is a statement that there's a tension between how a layer of people are, I think, radicalized more deeply against the state, and there's also the predominant power of the two-party system, right? And I'm just sort of trying to imagine if it's ever gonna become coherent or have some power base, what that would look like, right? And but I do agree it's a mistake to think that, like, what we should be doing is try and put our effort into the protest in order to peel people off. That is not that. I do agree with that argument.
My reason for pessimism is not because I'm saying the process you're describing is not one that is going to have to happen. I do believe it's going to have to happen. People are going to have to come into direct conflict with the contradiction of their beliefs. I'm just saying I haven't just gone through this under Clinton, under Bush, and Bush and Nader, under Obama, and then under Trump, and then under Biden. Like, I've gone through 3 years of people in the freedom movement saying the narrative is cracking, right? Telling me that this thing is breaking down. People are starting to realize, and that was a complete lie that we were telling ourselves. That not only did the narrative not crack, but all of those people have been recaptured back into the forces of the state, supporting Palantir, supporting Fourth Industrial Revolution, all of them, like to a person. And I'm saying that there is nothing on the ground that would not make that happen. And I don't believe in a process that makes that happen. People, some organization, some revolutionary organization has to make that happen, and it just doesn't exist. And so that's partly why I'm so bitter about this and so pessimistic. Is I've been through this over and over and over and over again, where somebody who is on my side, who sees the same problem, starts to tell me, "Oh, look, it's starting to break there." Fuck off. It's not breaking at all. It's actually re-annealing in a new way. And by the way, now you're captured in it because now you think we've got to stop immigrants at the border. So that's why I'm so like, I'm just going to have to see something until I believe in it. But I'll be honest, I'm going to have to see something because I've been lied to too many times for me to have hope in just the contradictions are emerging and that. It's like, nah. Apparently, people can take any level of lie and wrap it into their brain and turn it into some kind of truth in the absence of anything truly revolutionary that exists for them as some sort of physical presence that's directing them, that's offering them an alternative. And that the alternative doesn't exist for the left or for the right.
I was going to say what you were also saying, Andy, about this No Kings protest is the fact that I wish that same level of resistance would have been there with No Kings protest against the people that were imposing the curfews, such as there are now curfews in LA.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're still happening, but there were. And the
Imposed
curfew
by the Democrat Karen Bass,
yes,
by the Democrat governor.
and when we had curfews during 2020 and 2021, whatever your level of health scare was, the moment you allowed for the government to impose a curfew, that is the moment that we allowed others to take power into their hands without resistance. Same way that we allowed for power for it to be in the hands without resistance during 9/11. In the same way that we allowed it as well during the war on drugs, the war on drugs. There's a difference on those two in terms of the war on drugs. The same way that we allowed it on against the terrorists. And we went over, in keeping in line with 9/11, to find these weapons of mass destruction, which we were lied to. And so I think that these Democrats that's why I want us to be clear and to share with our audience, whether you're on the right or the left, whether you are a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, part of the freedom movement, MAGA supporter, the reactionary right, alt-left, alt-right, whatever you are, I think that this is socialists, by the way, those two, that we should always be questioning any sort of co-opting of a movement such as the BLM that was also co-opted by the movement, by Hillary Clinton, by the Dems. And so, of course, I support for anything that a movement resistance against discrimination. Of course, I support a movement that's supportive of anti overreach of the government, but it has to be consistent. It has to be consistent, and I'm afraid that we lose that. We're blinded by the influence of what's happening to think we must exert that energy that way, and then also the red or MAGA supporters think it's also this way, and it keeps being a clash between these divided factions that I think even some of my friends try to uphold and to maintain, because that's what they do. They have this. They're so blinded by the need to resist the Dems or resist the Republicans, and so I'm always concerned about that. The other thing too is I speak to my Latino community. So many do I hear say in Florida, well, you have to do it the legal way And then those who are legally already documented say, well, I had to go through hell. You must as well. There's a legal way of it. Well, there were legal ways to allow my friends to come in 2022 and 2023 to go into the USA, and suddenly that's gone. The TPS has been lifted. All kinds, the humanitarian parole is also being lifted. So it's this game that they keep playing. And when Biden in June of last year was also trying to play games and giving citizenship towards those that have been more than 10 years in the country and who are in relationship with a U.S. American citizen, but then suddenly shifted and said in the very same week decided to also put more barriers at the border. In the very same week, giving status to those that were in the country for more than 10 years and who are in partnership with a U.S. American citizen, but then putting more barriers at the border on the very same week. I forget the legal, what was that at the time, those restrictions, how they were framed. But in that very same week in June, I remember it happened in June because it was heartening to some family members in my family, but then it was also disheartening to other family members that were trying to cross over and that were trying to get into the border. And it's this game from Puerto Ricans getting some status, from Cubans who no longer have the status because it's been taken away, but were always given status because they were trying to run away from the Fidel Castro regime, then Venezuelans, Haitians, and Nicaraguans, and given certain status, and now suddenly being taken away that status. It's this game that you'll never win. And so it pits one labor class folk over the other. And you see commoners constantly fight against each other, trying to point fingers that you should do it the right way. This is the right way to go. There is no fucking right way. Mm-hmm. There's all these ways are trying to make us get exactly what they're trying to make us do, which is to put us against one another. Mm-hmm. So I'm emphasizing that never trust a Democrat when they talk about No King's Day, because it only applies to the other side, the Republicans. And never trust the legal citizenship way or the right way, because there's never a fucking right way. And suddenly the people who did it the right way are no longer under that right way anymore. It's been taken away from them.
And so I want to point something out though for our audience, Eduardo, and the people we've been around. That same hypocrisy that the people were so disgusted by with the Democrats, people who have now joined the freedom movement, who are calling for cops, like people who are saying, "How dare you resist cops? How dare you resist these security borders?" Like, right. You are now a fraud when you talk about people's right to resist, right to arm themselves, and things like that. So you have joined the very ranks of the hypocrisy you were condemning 3 or 4 years ago, and now you're part of them. And in the same way you say Democrats have to get right with their lies, now the freedom movement people are going to have to get right with their lies, And if you don't, I don't believe it. Like, I don't believe there can be a true accounting unless people come to an understanding like, you know what, I was wrong about that. I was fucked 3 or 4 years ago. I should have done different. Until that happens, I'm not buying it. On both sides.
You wanted to say something, Michael?
I wanted to say that the billboard "Stop Hiring Humans" is actually a reminder that the kings are capital. Capital is king, and that's a bipartisan. That's a consensus. That's a bipartisan consensus. Capital is king, mm-hmm. And if you don't have any significant capital, then I like using the word commoner. You're just a commoner. Then you're selling your labor or trying to get some other hustle going, but mm-hmm. You're essentially, you're essentially at the whims of people who hoard the jobs. And so, no kings, like, it's, okay. Yeah. No more capitalists. Mm-hmm. No more, no more dictatorship of the bourgeoisie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I thought of commoner because with the king's reference, I kept thinking, what's the opposite of king? The commoners. We're all commoners.
Yeah. Yeah. And I I really like the political slogan of "Bring back the guillotine."
You know, the
I
other
think I
thing,
want a little guillotine. I want to like make like guillotine pins.
the other thing too is all this ask of me to condemn this violence, and I already spoke to that, and to condemn the curbing, excuse me, to condemn the vandalism, and it's like I could care less if some kid is throwing rocks at the military in Palestine or vandalizing a Walmart. I just, it's not something, I mean, what are we looking at here? Are we going to look at the real threat that's happening and that's right in front of us that we're not seeing, and that we're just wanting to see the good protester versus the bad protester? It just, once we fall into that trap, then we lose sight of what is really at stake here, you know? So even the looting, it's like some people tell me, it's like, what about the looting? Well, there's a more looting going on, but it's not happening. It's like that television or whatever does not compare to the millions and billions of dollars that the looting that's happening at the highest level. So
Yeah, and Michael, can you show that poster one more time? So what that basically means, I mean, I think people are going to have to really think about this question of property destruction ultimately. That this is the world we're going to be fighting against. And these people are saying property is going to be taking your job. And we are going to be pitted against that. We are going to have to be either challenging intellectual property, whether it's in the form of an AI program or a robot. Like it's us or them. And that's not the real battle. It's still working class versus capital. But if we fall into the notion that there's something magical about property, then these people have already decided that property is about to take our job. And if we, what way are you going to stop that other than, I mean, part of the way of doing that is going to be destroying that property. That's what happened with the what is it called? The Luddites and the Looms. And we're going to be faced with that same question. So
This means that they've already bet on property replacing us.
right.
This means that they've massively invested in it.
Yep.
This means there's a large, powerful group of people who are going to push to make this a reality.
Right. So giving up on the right giving up on the idea that we can take that property down is giving up on the right of challenging this world that they've constructed.
Yeah, there's really nothing that's made me want to smash a Waymo any more than this.
And it's particularly disgusting that it's put that
don't say
artisan is the
that on
name of
here.
that artisan is the name of that company. It's like,
Yeah. Oh, well, their other thing is that okay, powered by artisans. There was another one that's like artisans. These artisans won't complain. There it is. Artisans won't complain about work-life balance.
yeah, these people are asking for it. But
Off with their heads.
there's just a lot more. I mean, reality is there's just a lot more organization that's going to have to come from our side to challenge this. And unfortunately, there wasn't an insurrection in January 6th, and there wasn't an uprising on June 6th.
Mm-hmm.
No, but
But it is also.
people are.
I also want to stress, yes, it wasn't insurrection. I completely agree with you there, Andy. And I don't want to dismiss the youth that are there and the people who truly have a heart to want to do something. Unfortunately, if they ever come to this episode, and I hope they do, if they cross their paths, and unfortunately the algorithms are against us, steer away from any leader, any organization trying to take your anger, your disappointment, your frustration, and to ask you, the only thing you can do is be ready in 4 years to vote. There are a lot more things that you should be doing That is not waiting around until you change who's sitting at the White House. So,
Yep.
Anyhow, I think that does it for this week's episode, huh? Well, that does it for this week's episode. What's Left is a weekly political podcast channel challenging the mainstream left. We post information about our topics and our guests on the episode notes wherever you found this episode or on our blog on what'sthepodcast.com. You can find past episodes to this podcast /channel there and connect with us. I remind folks, if you like anything you've heard here, please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications to any of our platforms on Spotify, iTunes, Podcast, BitChute, Odyssey, YouTube, Rumble, or Telegram. You can find our blog and any of those links in the episode notes wherever you found this episode. If you would like to give us feedback about something you've heard, such as today, and you might think otherwise about what we've been saying, or you might suggest something for us to cover, contact us through our blog, and Andy will always answer you there, giving credits to Andy for always doing that hard work behind the scenes. Thank you, Andy. And we are Michael and Andy, and I'm Eduardo. Thank you all for listening. Check us out for next time. Ciao, ciao.